Tina and Chris, thank you so much for being part of our Sounds of Summer series, screening Stop Making Sense in the Park. I've been watching Stop Making Sense and copying those dance moves for a good 20 years. But originally I thought the film and the show had been conceived together, and obviously that is not the case. It was part of the Speaking in Tongues tour, and it blows my mind that you were doing that every night. So tell us a little bit about how long had you been on tour when you shot that? Where did you shoot it and over how many nights?
Well, we shot it at the Pantages Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, I guess it is. Yeah. In Los Angeles. And we did it over 3 nights. We shot 3 nights. And it's a good thing we did, because the first night everybody was a little nervous and played too fast. And the second night everybody was groovy, and then the third night was just like safety. But I think we did take considerable stuff from the third night, and we had been on tour how long, Tina? A couple, 3 months, I think.
Well, most of that year.
Yeah, we were well seasoned by the time we got to Hollywood.
Because it's amazing how it feels perfectly rehearsed, but perfectly spontaneous at the same time.
Well, it was a very tight ensemble. One thing I like to say is that everybody in the band and the crew and the film crew were really at the top of their game. And thank goodness, because it still holds up all these years later. It's still a great show.
It's very rare, those moments when the stars align like that, because like you say, everyone was at their pinnacle.
Good chemistry.
Yeah, the undeniable chemistry with everyone involved and the audience.
And we rehearsed and played together so much, and all around the world, really, that with that particular group of people, that we communicated without speaking most of the time. We just knew what. So it was very copacetic.
I mean, were those Hollywood nights particularly euphoric, or was that kind of indicative of how the tour had been going?
Oh, those were typical. That was a typical. Yes, what you get in the film is really typical of what was going on, except for those 3 nights, we had to wear the same costumes, the same clothes for continuity.
I wore a neutral jumpsuit to.
That's right.
Out of respect.
Everyone was. David Byrne told everyone in the band that they must wear neutral colors, no white, no black, so no one would stand out more than any of the others. The crew were all dressed in black, and then David came out in the biggest white suit you ever saw.
And I know you were a slight renegade and came out in a turquoise polo.
I'm not sure. You're right. I'm not sure how that happened.
It was a mistake, because he
or an act of defiance.
Wore that the first night, which he thought was a rehearsal, and then he had to keep wearing it.
I kind of liked it. It was very 80s,
and it was mostly in the dark.
That anyway. Color.
Sometimes you just got to pop.
We watched, by coincidence, we watched Philadelphia this morning, also directed by Jonathan Demme. And gosh, what a great filmmaker he turned out to be. When we decided to work with Jonathan, we were mostly going on that film that he made about Melvin and Howard, about
the milkman and Howard Hughes.
Yes, Howard Hughes supposedly left all his millions to this guy who saved him in the desert after a motorcycle accident. But we had seen that movie, but that's really all we had seen of Jonathan's work. He didn't have a whole lot of films under his belt yet. I guess he had had a few kind of B movies before that. But
he was kind of a promising young filmmaker.
But yes, he was, and he was very friendly, and he came to our show, and he said, "You should make a movie about this," and we all agreed that was a good idea, and he took it from there and just did a fantastic job. He put together a really wonderful group of people to help us make that movie.
I mean, is it true you guys financed it yourself?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we own it.
We financed all of our own videos so that we would own them.
Oh, amazing.
It was on the advice of our manager, Gary Kerfer.
But that must have been, a kind of a gamble at that stage.
Well, yes,
the feature's a big commitment.
It was, because then we didn't play again. We didn't tour again, and we didn't make records for years. And after that, and we'd already spent all our money. So we had nothing to live on. So, but that's filmmaking.
Well, I imagine you would do it again then.
Oh, in retrospect, looking back, it was a very good thing to do.
Talking about have you considered before turning it into a film, because it's so cinematic?
Well, this is what Jonathan said to us, and I think that David was very keen to make a film, and we agreed with David that it was a good idea, and but we were very how shall I say, circumspect about doing a rock documentary. We didn't want a lot of close-ups of the guitar player's fingers or the keyboard player's fingers or stuff like that,
or split screens.
Yes,
or audience reaction shots. Except he did throw some in at the tail end, which was good. I mean, just to touch base with the fact that they're real people there.
You get just a sprinkling, just enough to know that it was a very gorgeous and excited crowd.
What we actually said to Jonathan is, that's a great idea, because he said, it's already set up. It looks like, on a proscenium stage type of deal. I mean, we had to have really deep and wide stages. They had to be a minimum of 40 feet wide, and a minimum of almost as deep. So don't. The dog is hungry. She comes always at this time. So
bring them in.
Yeah, they're in, but we don't have any food for them. So you're moaning. Anyway, what we did ask Jonathan after, he said, it's so set up perfectly for filming, and we said, we think so too, but what we don't know who to work with, because other than you, because you would understand us. You really love music. He'd done a small film about the Feelies, and so he had some experience with that sort of difficulty of sound and all. And but we said, what we would like it to be is that everyone is lit, and that the camera is like a sensitive eye that can view the whole of the stage, and you can choose and pick. I mean, obviously there are cuts and edits to individual performers, but there are a lot of wide full shots of the band, and you see the relationship and the interactions, and you can kind of get a feel. I mean, David Byrne's chords, and at the beginning he had a little farfisa and keyboard, and his trusty Fender guitar, and so you could switch from one to the other to change the texture, so the songs could be varied. And then when we had the big band, though, some of that seriousness dropped. I mean, we were very seriously performing, but at that point, I think we were 30 years old. And at that point in time, we'd always said, wouldn't it be wonderful when we get older and wiser, and we can slow the groove to really get the swing into the music sound? And Chris would always talk about that, and David would say, yes, that's a good, but to achieve it was another thing. And then we started playing with these wonderful African-American, Steve Scales, Bernie Worrell. I think Alex Weir was an amazing guitarist from the Brothers Johnson. Bernie Worrell, you know, from Parliament Funkadelic. He played on everything. He was the musical director and arranger for all of those records and shows. And so and then of course we had singers, real singers. In the movie, it's Lynn Mabry and Edna Holt. Yeah. And we'd also played with others as well, and then after again with others when they were not always available because they were so in demand. I mean, I think, didn't Lynn go and play with Michael Jackson after? So
no, George Michael.
Oh, George Michael.
Slightly different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had, top notch creme de la creme players, but they had fun. And so, for us, the challenge was to rise to their level of fun and empathy and drop some of that nerdy stress. I mean, some of that was part of who we were, because certainly that didn't work in the studio. In the studio, we were the four. We tried with the bigger band, but it never really gelled. It was better for them to come in and do an overdub if we ever wanted one. So I think with the four, we had this push and pull kind of chemistry, kind of like I call it the sort of solar hydrogen effect, because just as the sun is exploding outwards, it's also exploding inwards as well. I mean, these huge forces of energy, and so there's sort of this negative and positive pull, and there was that kind of chemistry going on with our band when we were, but once we were on stage with these amazing players, we were allowed to laugh and relax, and it changed into something that really communicated to the audience, and we could really enjoy the audience and watch the audience. I mean, didn't we once? We were at in Colorado. We were once
at Red Rocks.
At Red Rocks Amphitheater, and
we did that show at Red Rocks.
Yes.
And there was a moment in the show where David decided to, it's a beautiful outdoor amphitheater in the Rocky Mountains. And at one point in the show, David decided to go running out into the audience, and there's a trap door that he could go into, and then basically a tunnel that led under the stage, and then he could come back up onto the stage. So he went out there, and he was followed by a spot. And what happened, Tina?
well, David came trotting back through the audience from a little door that was right underneath the sound person who was making the sound, making music out of the music. And he ran back up onto the stage, but the spotlight stopped following him, and he wondered why. But we who were on stage and still trotting, jogging away on stage and playing, we were all laughing uproariously, because this was one couple's song, and they decided to just do it right then and there, right in the bleachers, and they were so into it.
They didn't notice the spotlight was on.
It was really like a nature moment, because they were completely unself-conscious and unaware, just doing it, and so it was a great.
They did get a good round of applause.
Yeah, to their utter surprise at the end.
That's the power of talking heads.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
now and again.
I mean, I was always very obsessed with Edna and Lynn, and just the name Brides of Funkenstein is enough to blow any sort of teenager's mind. I mean, how influential was that whole kind of P-Funk world? I mean, I was sort of struck in the book about how many mentions of actual burning houses there were.
Yes, yes.
But I don't think burning down the house is a reference to your actual apartment burning.
No, that was just a nonsense thing that got thrown on, because we'd just been to see in 1979 when we were writing that song. We were jamming in our loft in Long Island City, and we'd just gone to see a show of P-Funk at Madison Square Garden, 20,000 people. I mean, it was huge, and the people in the front 50 rows were just stomping their boots, and they were screaming, burn down the house, burn down the house. And so Chris, kind of to egg us on while we were, jamming and kind of improvising and figuring out what we were going to write next for Fear of Music, he started shouting this over his drum track, and it got onto our little cassette tape recorder, our little boombox that we recorded all our jams on to decide which bits worked and which ones didn't really gel. And so it stuck. It became a title of the song, and I don't think David Byrne even knew what it referred to at the time, because he did not attend that show.
But I mean, there's such. Oh, sorry, carry on.
No.
I mean, there's such great dance moves as discussed. And did those evolve as you were on tour, or were they kind of locked at the beginning?
They came quite naturally. I know Edna and Lynn kind of worked out because what they were going to do, because they said, "Oh, I do this thing. I think it's a good thing to do while you're not singing." And but then the rest of us, everybody just improvised their own thing. But of course, woe to he or she who left her little X mark on the stage, because if we did, we could get yelled at or punched or something. But that would be after the show. During the show, we had just ample loads of fun.
No punching during the show.
No punching. It was all good. During the show, everyone was so pathetic. I think people just get aggravated when they're tired after. There's a long amount of time when you're on the road. I mean, at least there we were, 4 days in the same place. We could sleep in the same bed 4 nights in a row, and that was pretty fantastic, and not have to travel somewhere. But usually
the Sunset Marquee.
Yeah.
So nice.
It was pretty nice.
Some history.
Let me just tell you one thing.
Oh, yeah.
That this is in my book, but Tina and I were sort of, when we first met, we kind of bonded over Saturday morning Soul Train, watching Soul Train on this little TV that my mom and dad gave me for Christmas.
A little 10-inch screen.
Little black and white TV, and we loved Soul Train. And while we were there shooting Stop Making Sense at the Pantages, a call came in. Since you're in town, how would you like to come down and shoot Soul Train? And so we were like, what? Don Cornelius wants us on the show? And they said, yes, you could do it tomorrow morning. And so we arrived, and of course, they make you get there like way before you actually have to tape the show. And then I remember we were all kind of like pretty sleepy. By the time the cameras rolled, we had woken up. And then after we did Soul Train, which was like a dream come true with Tom Tom Club. This is with Tom Tom Club. Then we went over and to the Pantages and did another night of Stop Making Sense. It was a big day.
How was it playing Genius of Love and having that sort of Tom Tom Club moment in the show? I mean, it must have felt really liberating, Tina, to kind of take over the mic and do this song that you'd created together.
Well, it was not supposed to be in the film. And I agreed to do it because I didn't think that it was, this is almost the end of the show. It's when David would go to change into the big suit. And so I agreed to do it so that he would have an opportunity to go change into his big suit. But it wasn't supposed to be part of the Talking Head film. And at the time, it caused quite a rift between me and my sisters because they were there to do Soul Train. They were actually the real Tom Tom Club girls, Lonnie and Laura. And that put me in a really bad place for a very long time because I didn't even know that it was put in until I saw the premiere. And then everybody was sort of kicking me and saying, but it's good, keep it in. And I understand now that people who do see it do enjoy it. It's like, it's a little bit one of those art films like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where people bring their aprons and their leather gloves and their rubber gloves to snap at the right time. And there's an audience participation. And so now, in retrospect, I think, oh, it wasn't such a bad thing, except that I did have to go through years of patching things, mending fences with my sisters, because why weren't they even on stage? They were there to do Soul Train. Why weren't they there to sing live? I mean, it was crazy.
That's showbiz.
Well, this one of the hindsights you have to, as you get older and wiser, you just have to say, well, that's, build champagne in a way, because it could have been done so much more gracefully. And I shouldn't have been tricked.
But film does live forever. And it is.
Yes, but I did find that was rather a nasty turn on me because I had such a lot of mending to do with my sisters who were just my best friends, and they weren't for a long time.
Because there's that.
They didn't believe me that I had nothing to do with it.
I hope it's resolved.
Oh, at this point in time, yes, everybody's grown up, and they're very happy because they, Chris and I carry on, and they don't have to do all that work, but they still get to pick up royalties. So that's all right, isn't it? All's well that ends well.
Because I was going to say, there's that bit when you sing "I'm in heaven with my boyfriend," and it cuts to Chris looking proud as punch, and it's the kind of the sweetest bit in the whole film.
It is. It's very romantic.
I mean, I love in the book how it's not corny. It would melt any cynic's heart.
Love is not corny, my darling.
No. But love is not corny, but that was kind of a corny shot edit. But the editor actually, to give her, I have tremendous respect for her, Lisa Day. Great editor. And of course we had the great lighting director, Jordan Cronenweth, and who did Blade Runner. Incredible. And then of course, someone who, the person who actually went on tour with us, because Jonathan Demme at the time was working on another film with Goldie Hawn, and he had to recut everything because she didn't like how she turned out in some of she wanted it to be grim reality picture, but then when she actually saw what grim reality looked like, no. and so he had
too grim.
So the actual person who was on tour with us, who actually mapped out every shot, every camera angle, was Sandy McLeod. And she toured with us, and she would talk to us about, what's working, what's not, so on and so forth. And
she also had a good understanding of music. She knew what she was doing. She did a great job.
She's an Alabama girl.
That's right.
How long did she tour with you? So she was kind of blocking it out.
Well, I would say about 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's why it's so harmonious.
Yes, exactly. That's why it's so harmonious. I mean, it's a lot of work to make something look that easy.
Did they ever ask you guys to kind of modify what was happening in your performance, or was it always them just following you? Were there any adjustments for the film version?
Before we answer, let me just adjust my burglar alarm, which is good.
That's good, because I made a mistake then too. So this is going to be the cut.
Can you do it? Press the code 1 and the code.
Do you want some more iced tea?
No, I'm good. Sorry about that.
Iced tea. No, joke.
There's a low battery somewhere, and it's telling me I should change it.
That's good, because I just lost my place. So.
Okay. So, yeah, we had I mean, and the crew were wonderful.
Shall I ask the question again, and then?
Yeah.
So it's a cut. So did the director and the crew ever ask you to kind of modify the performance for the film, or were they always following what had been on stage?
Let me say this. We didn't really modify. It was who we were, how we were. But one thing happened is that the film was, and the performance was done in 2 legs, 2 separate events. So we would do the first half of the show, and then we would go change into our clothes for the second half of the show. And they did a funny thing where David Byrne says, "Anybody have any questions?" He raises his hand, and that was dubbed in. I remember Laurie Anderson once, the wonderful Laurie Anderson. She stopped me on the street in Soho, and she said, that was all dubbed in, right? It was all dubbed in." I said, "Actually, no, Laurie, it wasn't, but it might look that way sometimes." I mean, I said that one sentence was, but there were buzzes on some of the keyboards from coming off of Byrne's keyboard. So a couple of things had to be repaired where there were clicks and,
This always happens when you do a live recording. Mm-hmm. Somebody unplugged something by accident,
right,
backstage, and things go crazy.
But that didn't happen that night. There was something else going on. That
happened when we were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Just before we went on stage, some tech guy tripped over the power cable to
I don't think he did
Jerry's
it
synthesizer.
I think he unplugged
Oh, you think they did it on purpose?
Sabotage.
I don't think it was done as sabotage, but they had no idea what they were doing. These are union guys.
Anyway,
they unplugged it, and if you unplug it, you lose all your. They had very carefully modulated all of their sounds to be exactly what they were supposed to be when we performed. And these things take hours to do on the Prophet 5. And so these are old analog instruments. And so it's just dumbness, ignorance, not intentional sabotage.
I mean, when you look back, are there any parts of your performance that you would change or modify?
Yes. I was told never to look at the camera. And while we were playing, This Must Be the Place, where David does a funny dance with a lamp, which he got, that's from an Astaire movie. Anyway, he did a dance. I think he did his with a hat stand. But anyway, he had a lamp, and I was supposed to. My cue was to dance over to being next to Lynn and Edna and David and stay there and play from there. And the camera suddenly went to me, and I didn't know it was there. And I accidentally glanced at it, and I made a funny little take on it. And everybody wonders, oh, what's she seeing there? And they kept it. So that's just something to know.
It's those little moments that.
Well, you know, I think I'm a natural comedian.
Chris, did you say you'd regretted some of your gusto on the mic? I read.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if I wasn't a little over the top in the 80s. Not just that night, but every single night for a decade or more. But you know, Tina's gone to.
Yeah, we'll hold. We'll hold.
Press 1 and then the code, and then you'll hear a beep. Pardon me, Tabitha.
No worries. That's what editing's for.
It shouldn't have started again. I know how to do it. Gosh, I've lived with that thing for too long.
Now it's good for.
Get a sip.
Now it's good for another half hour.
Okay.
So
he did it twice. He thinks that makes it last 15 minutes longer.
Should we take bets?
All right. So
I was going to say,
we can start on a new question.
Yeah, I mean, were there bits of the show that you really looked forward to doing? The kind of favorite numbers?
Yes. I think that my favorites were Once in a Lifetime, Burning Down the House, Take Me to the River, and I would say Psycho Killer, but David decided to do that by himself. So, but yeah, those three were pretty groovy. Oh, there's also a song called what Cross-Eyed and Painless. It's pretty intense. It starts off real funky, and then it's like full speed ahead. It was really good.
So did you guys have a hand in how the film was released?
Oh, yes.
What was your kind of strategy for that?
That it be placed in art theaters, you know, as an art film, not as a feature film, because we felt it would die a death as a feature film. And that was on the advice, again, of Gary Kurfürst, who knew quite a lot about Hollywood. And had a lot of friends in Hollywood who said, "Oh, don't do that," and he was right.
We tried to show it where nearby college campuses, so that college kids could come, and we kept the ticket prices low, and we also made sure that the theaters had a darn good PA system in there, so it would be nice and loud. Because you know, besides being a great film, it's also a great audio recording.
Yes, the present audio recording on DVD, it's the best one because originally it was recorded in what they called surround sound, which was in four separate tracks. And when the record label re-released it, they forgot to do a quality check with us. and the technicians had just simply lopped off 2.
Oh.
So everything that was in mono, like you know, kick drum, bass, lead vocal was in the mix, but a lot of things dropped out because they were left or right. They were too far left or right, so they were just gone. But and then we thought, oh well, now we've got it on DVD, you know, Blu-ray. Let's make sure we get just the best top mixes, and so we hired one of our favorite engineers, Eric Thorngren, and he did a 5.1 mastering with Gary Harrison, working with him, and he also did. But if you want to, if you're not careful with the DVD when you're showing it, it will default to what they call the video mix, and it's done by some film people who unfortunately, they put the default there. They did things like where the most important thing was that you could hear David Byrne crossing from stage left to stage right, and so on. But otherwise, it's just horrific. I mean,
So rather than dwell on the bad things,
well, no,
let's talk
no,
about.
Stop. Let me finish because it's very important.
Okay.
Don't choose the default mix. Choose either the Eric Thorngren, either the stereo mix or the 5.1 mix. Do not go to the default mix. You must select your mix to get the full effect. Otherwise, you have Steve Scales playing those rototom drums on Burning Down the House with Kids. It just sounds like a bunch of little frozen peas pattering onto the drum skins. So a warning if for audio lovers, hi-fi audio lovers.
Well, I'm excited. For our screening, we've got a gorgeous DCP version, so it's going to be
okay,
marvelous.
So it'll have the right audio.
Have you ever been in the cinema to watch it when people have started dancing?
Yes, yes. Well, we went to 2 premieres, one in New York and one in Los Angeles. And people got pretty excited, even though it was a business crowd, you know. But then we saw it at 15 years later? We saw it, all the talking heads got together with Jonathan Demme at the San Francisco Film Festival. And we saw it in the Castro. And people went pretty wild. It was great.
I actually reached out to my best friend who we've kind of really shared this film over the years, and he reminded me of how we went into watch it in an empty cinema at lunchtime one day, kind of just out to get out of the rain, and we danced in every position around this empty cinema so we could pretend that we were watching it from all the different places in the audience.
That's great.
It is nearly 40 years since you made Stop Making Sense, and here we are chatting about it. Why do you think it has such an enduring appeal?
Well, I would say that it's good music, and it's a real entertaining show. And I don't think we dealt with a lot of cliches of that time period where it was created. I think we were very, as Tina once said when we were interviewed by Dick Clark on American Bandstand, "What's your goal? What do you hope to achieve?" She said, "Well, we'd like to make our mark in music history." And I think everybody on that stage felt the same way. That was our goal, is to make our mark in music history. And guess what? We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it seems like, especially from reading the book, the commitment to sort of newness and originality is so evident and seems to be the thing that really brings you all together, but also your curiosity and being fans of music as well as musicians. So it's this moment where all these amazing influences are sort of drawn together, from the sort of theatrics of Robert Wilson to P-Funk. Do you think it was something that, Talking Heads in essence and that show, it's a kind of moment in time when there were so many different exciting types of music and things drawn together that makes it such a kind of heady combination, if that makes sense?
Certainly true. And music goes on. I mean, that's the beauty of it, is that it goes on. It lives on. But yes, you're quite right about us being huge fans of other people's music as well.
After this is a cute story. You asked if there was any particular excitement about being in Hollywood, and was it any different than any other location we did the show? And after the final night, we allowed people to come backstage, and all the publicists leapt into action. And one of the first people to come backstage was our friend Mary Lambert, who is directed. She went to RISD with us, and she directed, I think, 9 videos for Madonna, and also, Janet Jackson, Motley Crue, and
she created that MTV look.
She did, and so she was one of the first people to come backstage. She's still working, but anyway, she came backstage, gave us a big kiss, and then I looked over her shoulder, and there was Robbie Robertson from the band leading Peter Gabriel backstage. And, Peter Gabriel was very hip and au courant at the time. And there were a lot of young Hollywood people, a throng of them surrounding all of us. And then all of a sudden, it was like the seas parted, and this big guy comes walking toward us, big beard, long hair. It was Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. And Brian Wilson walked right past Robbie Robertson, right past Peter Gabriel, right past David Byrne, right past me, and went straight to Tina. And what did he say? I think he said
he said, "Oh, you cut your hair."
And you're a huge Beach Boys fan, right?
Oh, goodness. Yes. Huge.
But that was a big moment for me, because I loved the Beach Boys, and I loved pretty much everything Brian Wilson had ever composed.
Yeah. You're like, and I love that Robbie Robertson was there. From the other greatest concert movie ever made.
Yes, the second best.
That's how we build it. Well, I hope that we're going to have everyone dancing.
Don't forget Spinal Tap.
Oh, Spinal Tap.
That one. That's killer.
I guess you could say that Spinal Tap is the best.
Probably. Well, if anybody in Germany makes one, then that will be the best.
There must be a Kraftwerk one.
Oh,
but well, we'll be turning it up to 11 at our screening tonight, and hopefully we'll have everyone dancing in the field.
Yeah, I hope they do my Spider Lady dance.
I'm all over that. And do you have a message maybe for everyone who's here at the screening this evening?
I would say that if you play a musical instrument, or if your children play a musical instrument, keep doing it. And we need all the good musicians we can get.
I'll play us out now. Thank you so much for talking to us. Really appreciate it, and being part of this special night.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to the show, and have a good time.
Okay, I think that's great. Unless I've missed anything, I think that's.
We'll have some editing to do.
I'm used to it. After Dickie, I can edit anything.
It's a good show for re-entry from COVID exclusion. No, reclusion.
Say that again.
It's a good show for re-entry. You're going to love it.
That's basically the whole idea. That's the idea. I was like, what's the best film we could show to get everyone together in the musical communion that we've missed so much for a year? So that's why that was the whole idea, basically.
Yeah.
Marvelous.
Well, thank you, guys. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Appreciate it.